Welcome, curious minds. Today, we're stepping off the marked trails and into the shadows of the wilderness. We're not here just for the scenery, though. We're digging into some really unsettling stories, accounts from the park rangers themselves. These are the people sworn to protect these places, but they often witness things that, well, they defy easy explanation. We've collected some truly chilling tales, stories of human darkness, strange happenings, things that linger. So get ready, because this might change how you see the peace and quiet of nature. Okay, first up, we're heading to Washington State. There's this trail, quite popular with college students. Picture this, quiet Saturday morning, a ranger's doing his usual patrol. And he spots this young woman. Right away, she looks out of place, underprepared for a hike, stumbling, walking really slowly. Something's clearly wrong. So the ranger moves closer, and yeah, her condition is bad. Clothes are dirty, hair is wet and stringy, and there's this dark patch on her back, like something's soaked through. She's obviously in a bad way. He calls out, park ranger, standard procedures. She turns around. And the sight, it's horrific. She's got the severe head wound right above her eye. The eye itself is just caked with blood. Then she just collapses. Barely gets out the words, water, water, He gives her the water. He has radios for immediate medical help. And then the smell hits him. Really strong, unmistakable, gasoline. Suddenly it's clear. This wasn't some fall. This was something else entirely. And just before she passes out, she manages one more whisper. My friends. Just imagine hearing that. Leaves you with this cold dread, right? Wondering what happened, who else might be involved. So the ranger team gets there. They start searching for these friends immediately. They find a nearby campsite. There's a fire pit, but the fire's been doused. Empty booze containers around, and that smell again lingering. Gasoline everywhere. The full story comes out about a week later. It's just gut-wrenching. Remember her last words. My friends! Turns out it wasn't a stranger who did this. It was her own friends. They lured her out there, beaten her horribly, poured gasoline all over her, and they actually tried to set her on fire. The only reason she survived. The lighter malfunctioned. Can you even imagine? Over some stupid love triangle, apparently. She somehow managed to run, hid in the woods for hours, drifting in and out of consciousness before finding the strength to stumble out. It really makes you stop and think, doesn't it? The ranger involved, he reflected on it later, he talked about the difference between, say, a bear attack, which is predictable, it's survival, and this kind of human evil. It's incomprehensible. His words were something like, animals kill to survive, humans sometimes kill just to watch.
That's a really powerful point. What stands out is that inversion of what we expect danger in the wild to be. You go out there maybe worried about wildlife, the elements, but this story slams you with the reality that sometimes the most terrifying predator is another person. It brings a whole different premeditated kind of horror into that natural setting. Really shifts a ranger's perspective on threats.
Absolutely, a really chilling reminder. Okay, let's move from human cruelty to something different. A mystery where nature itself seems to be guarding a secret. We're going over to the Mourne Mountains in the UK now. So a ranger gets this call early morning. A wild camper, absolutely terrified. He's woken up, he says, to find a couple of dead sheep right outside his tent. Now, the ranger's initially a bit skeptical. Dead sheep, well, sad, aren't exactly, unheard of in farming areas. But the camper's terror was extreme. He point blank refused to go back to his tent, not even for his gear. Said he wouldn't go back for anything. He even told the ranger, maybe you should bring a gun, which for a UK ranger who isn't armed really signals how panicked this guy was. Pure hysteria. The ranger follows the guy's somewhat vague directions, finds the campsite, and what he sees, it wasn't just a couple of dead sheep, it was 4, and they were eviscerated, just torn apart. Bits of wool, flesh, bones scattered everywhere. It was such a mess, the camper couldn't even give an accurate count initially. The ranger literally had to count the skulls to be sure. Just horrific.
And that level of violence, the sheer disarray, it's fascinating from an analytical standpoint. It doesn't immediately scream fox attack or even dog pack. The pattern or lack thereof is unusual. It points towards something far more chaotic, maybe even deliberate. And then what the former says next adds another layer of weirdness.
Exactly. The ranger talks to the camper. The guy has no idea how he slept through whatever happened. Right outside his tent flap, he's completely spooked, convinced the sheep were left there as some kind of warning. But a warning from who or what? He had no clue. Then the ranger tracks down the farmer who owned the sheep. This deepens the whole mystery. The farmer confirms, yes, 4 sheep are missing. But here's the kicker. They didn't vanish overnight. They disappeared one by one over the previous 2 weeks. And his fences, he described them as a fortress. Wood stakes, chicken wire, the works. Impossible for sheep to just wander out. He was already convinced someone or something was taking them before this happened. But despite the scene, the whole thing was kind of dismissed officially. Maybe a spike in the fox population, they said. A wildlife expert came out, but the remains were too far gone for a proper analysis of the wounds. So, the ranger, left completely baffled. It's one of those unsolved cases that just sticks with you. He said years later, it's not what he knows that haunts him, is what he doesn't know, the impossibility of it all.
And that's a classic example of how investigations can hit a wall when the evidence just doesn't fit any known box. You have sheep vanishing from a secure place over time, then appearing mutilated all at once somewhere else. It forces you to confront the limits of conventional explanation. It leaves this unsettling void, this persistence of the unknown.
An unsettling void is right. And speaking of places with persistent voids, let's travel to Slovakia. Specifically, the Tribec Mountains. They look calm, peaceful even, but according to rangers there, they're anything but normal. They've actually got a nickname, Slovakia's Bermuda Triangle. Because of this history of really strange, unexplained disappearances, one of the earliest recorded ones goes way back to 1929. A local guy, Mr. A. Samsali, told his neighbor he was just popping out for a walk in the snow. It was November. He never came back. Vanished. They never found a body, which is odd, apparently, for a relatively small mountain range like Tribec. Usually, missing people turn up eventually. Then jump forward to 1939, Walter Fisher. He worked in a shoe factory. Went for a hike in January, said he was heading towards this old ruined fortress called the Black Castle. Now, this was a pretty long, tough hike for a day off, especially in winter snow. It felt like maybe he had some specific reason to go there. And Walter vanished, just gone for months. Until May, he suddenly reappears, found unconscious in a field, but get this, he's over 30 kilometers away from where he was last seen, on the opposite side of the mountains. His clothes are in tatters, he's got these severe wounds. Some reports said burns, others mentioned cuts. And the weirdest part, he had zero memory of the missing months. Total amnesia. Spent the rest of his life in a psychiatric hospital. The theories back then were wild spies, given the looming war, time portals, aliens, you name it. It just shows how baffling his return was.
Walter Fisher's case really makes you ask fundamental questions. What kind of force or event could inflict that level of physical trauma and simultaneously wipe someone's memory clean? Yet also transport them, somehow return them, alive, but broken. It pushes against our basic understanding of physics, biology, everything. It's deeply perplexing.
Deeply perplexing is putting it mildly, and it didn't end there. 1966. A couple, Jan and Elena, they drive out to the forest, park their car near the Tribec woods, they get out, walk into the trees, and are never seen again, ever. Extensive searches, nationwide attention, nothing. It was like they just stepped out of the car and dissolved into the forest. The Slovakian ranger who shared these stories, you can hear the frustration in his voice. He said these aren't like typical missing person cases where you eventually find something. These Tribec cases remain complete blanks. He said it makes even rational people start questioning, what's real and what's sci-fi. For him, it's not just folklore. He believes something genuinely strange and frightening is happening there. Now, not all unsettling encounters are these huge, drawn-out mysteries. Sometimes it's just a flash, a brief, terrifying moment that sticks with a ranger forever. Let's touch on a few of those. An Alaskan ranger out on patrol with his partner. They see a guy crouching behind a bush. The guy acts all casual, says hi, even knows the partner's name, claims he was just, taking a leak. Seemed a bit off, but nothing concrete. Years pass. The ranger finds out who that man was. Israel Keyes. The serial killer who traveled around burying murder kits and killing people seemingly at random. Suddenly, that mundane encounter becomes this absolutely chilling brush with pure evil. Knowing who you were standing so close to sends a shiver down your spine. Mm-hmm. Then there's a ranger in New Mexico, middle of nowhere on a dirt road, finds a van just completely engulfed in flames, tires melting, stuff popping inside, just inferno. It was later ruled a suicide. But the location, the horrific method, it just baffled the ranger. Made absolutely no sense unless the engine had catastrophically failed. But it was deliberate. He said he still thinks about it, how it just doesn't add up. And a quick one from a ranger in training in Northern California, riding an ATV near sunset. Suddenly, the small black bear just darts out, maybe 5 feet in front of him, running incredibly fast, zooms across the path and vanishes into the trees. It was over in a second. But the sheer speed, the closeness, and that immediate fear as the mother bear nearby, it made his heart pound. Even knowing it was probably just a yearling, that split-second terror is something you don't forget. And sometimes the unsettling comes from your own mind, pushed to the limit. There was this ranger during a massive wildfire outbreak. He'd been fighting fires for days, barely any sleep, breathing smoke constantly, utterly exhausted. He started seeing these figures. Described them as looking similar to the ghost of Obi-Wan, sort of shimmering, walking behind trees, then just vanishing into static. Now he's rational about it, attributes it to extreme fatigue and smoke inhalation hallucinations. But the image itself, seeing those figures in the smoke-filled woods, Deeply unsettling, even if you think you know the cause. Okay, our final story tonight. We're going to Arizona. And this one is about the disappearance of one of their own, Paul Braxton Fugate, a National Park Service ranger. Paul loved the outdoors, sought that freedom. January 13th, 1980, he's working at Chiricahua National Monument, tells a coworker he's heading out for a short trail walk back by 4:30 p.m. He stepped out onto that trail and was never seen again. The search was massive. Nearly 30 rangers, police, even a National Guard helicopter, plus volunteers. They combed the area, found absolutely nothing, no sign of him. His wife, Dottie, was heartbroken. She kept organizing volunteer searches for months, even years, checking old mines, pushing politicians for answers. But nothing. So what happened? Theories started flying. One investigator pointed to drug smuggling. The park is close to the Mexican border, known trafficking route. Could Paul have stumbled onto a deal gone wrong? This gained a bit more traction years later when another park employee was assaulted near where Paul was last seen. Connection? Maybe. Then there's a key witness account. A volunteer, Dick Horton. He claimed he saw Paul later that day, slumped between two men in a dark green pickup truck, leaving the area fast. He said Paul looked sad, maybe had a small head injury. This points strongly towards abduction. But it was just one witness, no other solid proof came from it. But then there were whispers. Maybe Paul chose to disappear. Another investigator suggested Paul might have walked away from his life, pointing to his career maybe stalling, and apparently a secret affair with a much younger colleague. An affair that resulted in a pregnancy and an abortion. Was it shame? A desire to start over somewhere else?
And this case really highlights the agonizing difficulty of these kinds of investigations, especially in remote areas. You have these competing narratives, a violent external threat, like drug smugglers, versus deeply personal reasons for vanishing. Without concrete evidence, it's incredibly hard to know which path is true. Investigators aren't just searching the land, they're digging into the complexities of a human life. That duality, the external versus internal possibility, makes solving it almost impossible when the trail goes cold.
Exactly. And it got even murkier. Anonymous letters started showing up, written in block print. They actually named people allegedly involved in Paul's murder, suggested where evidence might be. But following those leads hit dead ends. The people named either died later or refused to talk, possibly due to prison gang affiliations. More shadows. Even Paul's wife, Dottie, came under brief suspicion, mostly because she inquired about his retirement benefits fairly early on, just 2 weeks after he vanished. However, she took a polygraph test, and the results indicated she was being truthful about her innocence. Though some minor inconsistencies, like an unfinished life insurance form, kept questions lingering for some. But perhaps the most chilling piece of this puzzle is something Paul himself wrote. Over a year before he disappeared, he wrote a letter and a sort of handwritten will for Dottie. It started with the line, "You won't be opening this unless something bad has happened, or at least I hope not." It gave her practical advice, how to manage things alone, specifically telling her how to claim his government death benefits. It strongly suggests Paul felt his life might be in danger well before he actually vanished. Paul Fugate. He remains the only U.S. National Park Ranger to ever disappear without a single trace found. His fate is still a complete mystery. A stark reminder that sometimes the wilderness keeps its secrets. Sometimes dead men really do tell no tales. So from the terrible things people can do to each other in isolated places, to disappearances that seem to defy physics, and those brief, heart-stopping moments of fear. These stories from park rangers show us that the real unsettling mysteries often lie just off the map, hidden behind the peaceful facade of nature. They remind us how thin that line between the known and the truly unknown can be. We really hope these accounts have captured your imagination, maybe given you a little chill. Lots to think about regarding what might be lurking out there. If you found these true, terrifying tales as compelling as we do, please do us a favor. Hit that like button, share this deep dive with anyone else who appreciates a genuine scare. And most importantly, subscribe to the Horror Docx channel. That way you won't miss any of our future explorations into the dark and mysterious. Thanks so much for listening. Until next time, stay curious. And maybe, just maybe, keep an eye on those shadows.